I never met my birth parents. They both died on a job when I was a baby, and I went into foster care. I didn't have any interest in knowing anything about them. My adoptive parents are the ones who raised me. However, everything changed a week ago when a group of men came knocking at my door. They wore what looked like military uniforms, but instead of the usual green, they wore a distinct red color instead. They loaded me, along with my foster parents, into an unmarked matching red van. We were rushed to a farmhouse on the opposite side of Washington where the facility was heavily guarded with intimidating men and unfamiliar machines that appeared like they required several men to operate. Being an IT major, I had no knowledge nor interest in these things. I'm not a runner, fighter, or a strategist, so I couldn't fathom what they wanted from me. They relentlessly interrogated me for 3 days, bombarding me with questions, and then, when they concluded that I was blissfully unaware, intimidated me with frightening information. Dumbfounded, I soaked in every ounce of knowledge they offered me. The new knowledge I gained made me see my parents in a new, terrifying light. I couldn't help but feel more resentment, adding on to the existing resentment I harbored. My parents not only betrayed themselves, but me as well, and part of me feared that I would never be safe again. I couldn't help but feel manipulated. They were long gone, but their past still controlled my fate. I was eventually uprooted to a secondary protective facility, one in which I was not permitted to know the location of. For my own safety, they assured me. Once settled, they supplied me with new electronics and destroyed my old ones. They warned me that I was to stay under the radar, completely untraceable. Again, for my own protection. I was confident that given my knowledge of IT, software engineering, and cybersecurity, I would remain unseen and untraceable to anyone who might be hunting me. Now that I am sure I am safe, I can finally write this message and warn anyone connected to the initial bloodlines involved. It is crucial for my message to reach you. The story begins with my biological grandfather. He worked for a branch of the government closely related to NASA. Following the moon landing, there was a great deal of classified developments that the population was oblivious to. The department my grandfather worked for protecting the world against extraterrestrial threats, or extraterrestrial terrorism as they described it. Paranoia gripped them after the moon landing, and they took drastic measures to prepare. 5 years later, they deciphered the first communications and signals from frequencies previously unknown to them. These signals were so powerful that they destroyed entire systems, disrupted the power grid, and took down entire radio stations. This special branch of government discovered they could tap into these signals, which revealed that our galaxy has been under constant surveillance. This was ironically discovered by extraterrestrials working within this branch, tasked to monitor and prevent extraterrestrial terrorism on a much larger scale. At this point in their story, the soldiers were reluctant to divulge more, insisting that they already revealed too much. But I demanded full transparency, refusing to cooperate with their equivocation. It was essential that I know my involvement in these matters. So they continued, placing a huge box in front of me, overflowing with papers. They swiftly unveiled its contents to me, stacks of documents, and old tapes they tossed onto the table, one after the other. The documents contained, amongst others, details of weapons the organization, known as ESA, were crafting and testing, along with formulas to create immensely powerful weapons. They used advanced calculations to try and manufacture better equipment that could be sent up to space. They were doing this undisclosed, to monitor and learn as much as they could. The ESA spent millions designing and building a spacecraft to contain their equipment, if the situation ever called for it. It is still a work in progress. All of this is actively happening, the documents and footage stamped up until a week ago. I opened a document with a list of classified individuals who had this information. Presidents, EU members, a handful of the rich and powerful, who used this information to design and construct underground bunkers, granting that, if anything were to ever happen, they'd be prepared. These aren't a new concept though. The extremely rich and powerful have been known to publicly sponsor new technological advancements. While some may think this gave them the upper hand, it eventually proved their foolishness. The following is what I saw in the most crucial videos. Video 1. Dated 1975. The video opens in an empty cell, appearing to be a reinforced holding chamber. At first, the room is dark, then the spotlights switch on, illuminating the center of the room. Now in the light, I could clearly make out what looked like a reinforced metal wall with chains protruding from it. The focus shifts to the back of the room where a large door opens and something is dragged in a sheet, concealing its identity, and tied down with thick chains. The video ends. Video 2, June 1975. I saw about 20 armed men enter the room and start to unwrap the sheet from what they hauled in. After several minutes of unwrapping, the identity of the thing they brought in is revealed. There seemed to be a glitch in the recording. At different points in the video the screen was covered in static. The sound was muted, and the figure was hard to make out. It appeared that the creature was attempting to change shape, vibrating as if to phase into a different shape. Despite its best attempts, it remained unsuccessful and reverted back to its original form. Video 3. The very next day, June 1975. The video opens with the creature fully in focus. Within the 18 hours of footage, the creature is constantly seen attempting to change form. It fails every time, but that doesn't prevent it from trying again. It looks like a blur, occasionally a second head or what appears to be a human hand. It's apparent the creature has shape-shifting abilities. The next 200 videos are identical. To the naked eye, it seemed like a loop. But it wasn't. The creature was, however, relentless in its attempt to free itself or escape. Video 204, October 1975. This time the alien appeared to be asleep, head limp and no movement. This video had sound, but it was accompanied by a high-pitched buzz that made my ears hurt. At the 6-hour mark, the faint cry of a baby can be heard before gradually escalating into full-blown screaming. At first I suspected that one of the scientists had brought their child along, but the agents assured me the crying was coming from the creature. As the video progresses, the cries grow louder and more demanding, eventually accompanied by a deep voice. Close to the end of the video, 22 hours in, multiple voices begin to scream simultaneously, causing everything to shake. The documents show that, after this incident, the cage was reinforced. The next few videos are static, proving that the creature has the uncanny ability to manipulate video and disrupt frequencies. Video 340, February 1982. The creature, with its brown discoloration, possessed crocodile-like scales and an eagle-like head, but it was entirely reptilian in nature. It stood at a whopping 12 feet tall and was covered in an unknown slime-like substance. The chains were substantially thicker than they were years earlier, and the cage has been fortified. It looked like a different room altogether. The agents explained that the creature got loose and attacked 12 soldiers, absorbing them into itself instead of merely killing or eating them. The creature was taken to Nevada, close to the desert, where a strong armored underground structure had been constructed, far from civilization. The facility has been equipped with high-level security precautions which allowed sections of the building to be sealed off and rigged to explode, guaranteeing that, if necessary, the building would collapse in on itself, trapping the creature within its cage, underneath the rubble. The creature mirrored the image I conjured up in my head when I pictured the devil. Brown, scaly, a demonic voice. The eyes were its most terrifying feature, shaped like that of a reptilian, but blood red. I counted 4 horns on its head, and it bore a pair of nasty fangs. Its feet bore the resemblance of a dinosaur, but it lacked a tail. Once the creature was no longer phasing in and out, it settled on a more consistent appearance, one that was easier to recognize. Video 341, February 1982. This video marked the first appearance of my grandfather. He entered, along with 4 other men in lab coats, carrying a large syringe, approximately the size of my arm. He stuck it into the beast's heart, causing it to instantly fall into a deep sleep. He proceeded to connect various machines onto the slumbering creature, attaching electrodes to its head and chest which were linked to a sizable computer or something that resembled a computer. The video cuts off after this, leaving us to guess what occurred next. Video 343, February 1982. The lights in the room were far brighter than before, and it once again lacked the presence of sound. The reason for this remained unknown. Within the room stood a table filled with an assortment of equipment that appeared to be severely damaged. The lights flickered at intervals, and the creature began to phase in and out once more. This made it difficult to distinguish its appearance amid the static moments and blurred movements. The scientists observed the creature a safe distance away. The scientists were relying on a certain frequency they discovered to keep the creature at bay. It seemed to produce positive results for the next few videos. The videos that followed held a similar pattern. The creature remained silent, wired to machines while people came in and out taking notes, or the occasional blood or slime sample. The creature remained composed, not once attempting to shift or escape again. According to the agent's records, everything proceeded as planned. My grandfather welcomed his first son, my father, in 1975. He subsequently resumed his project until his resignation in 2008, when he was 55. A year later, he had a fatal heart attack, my grandmother following suit. My father was 34. My father and his younger brother began working for ESA in 2004, when they were 28 and 24. New technological advancements introduced better cameras and electronic equipment for testing purposes. Since the technology became so advanced, their visits to the cage became as infrequent as once a week, or even less often. With new needles, enhanced equipment and upgraded data collection, the project transferred to electronic records, ushering changes in the filing system. While we waited for my transportation, they shared more classified documents. According to the notes, the once wild and violent creature was now unrecognizably tame and responsive, even answering questions. It remained unclear whether they had intentionally provoked it or stumbled upon a means to subdue it. The circumstances surrounding my birth were strange. My dad impregnated a college classmate, and they made the mutual decision to put me up for adoption since either of them had the desire to raise a child. My mother was studying biology and my father, a young genius physicist that found it hard to understand basic human interaction as it was. According to my foster parents, I was born in 2000, but the data I was presented proved I was born 2 years prior. This revelation had a more profound effect on me than anything else I'd seen. Regardless, I was immediately given up for adoption and my existence was all but forgotten about. My adoptive parents moved to Iowa, and that's where I lived up until 2018 when I left for Harvard. I always wondered what my birth parents were like. My adoptive parents told me I was a genius and speculated that I inherited my brain from somewhere. It's an uncanny feeling, the knowledge that every aspect of my life was monitored. The videos documenting the creature continued for the next 6 years. It became routine, apart from the indistinct chatter from the observing scientists and other government employees. There were no other sounds, incidents, or noteworthy occurrences. The tests revealed that the creature's biology was predominantly alien, with no genetic material in common with humans. The scientists highlighted the alarming fact that the creature's DNA was ever-changing, resulting in frequent sample collection and analysis. They concluded that the creature was still a baby at the time of capture, which made it easier to contain. They did, however, underestimate its shocking growth rate, which resulted in the deaths of the 12 soldiers years prior. At the time, it was still in its adolescent phase. Further research uncovered that the creature had the unique ability to absorb the genetic material of the men it came into contact with. The more humans it absorbed, the more diverse its gene pool became. A portion of the genes obtained gradually became more similar to those observed in humans. It's as if the creature dove into an immense pool of genes and, as it absorbed more humans, its genetic makeup gradually began to adopt more human-like qualities. Although difficult to comprehend at first, the basic explanation is that with every absorption of genetic information, the creature's genetic composition seemed to evolve, storing human qualities within its own gene and gradually becoming more human-like. That is my understanding of it. Which brings me to the final video they have. Prepare yourselves. Video. MOV 507-84-36B. The creature behaved normally before viewing was disrupted by static. Among the sudden legion of voices, it echoed my father's name, simultaneously expanding in size, which causes the surroundings to convulse. Alarms resounded, piercing the silence as the creature tugged at its chains, cracking the floor ceiling in its attempt to break free. An ear-splitting roar escaped its mouth as hordes of armored soldiers rushed the cage, massive tasers in hand. They zapped the creature at maximum voltage as it continued to roar, lights flickering excessively. The camera feed is interrupted again by bouts of static. A second group arrived, armed heavily with guns, increasing the crowd to a total of 30. The gunfire was so severe that it affected the video's audio. One of the chains bound to the roof of the cage had already broken loose by the time the third group of soldiers arrived. This group carried a machine emitting bursts of fire, which had no effect on the creature aside from antagonizing it. It releases a powerful blast from its hand, causing the room to tremble, which shattered the bulletproof glass into millions of pieces and sent the men flying across the room. Both of the creature's hands were now free, and it began to morph. Finally, a fourth group arrived in heavily armored suits, unlike anything I've ever seen before. They wielded lasers and what appeared to be a concentrated lightning gun. I was grateful they hadn't made use of nuclear weapons, which would have wiped everyone out. After every attempt, the creature remained standing. Now it was his turn. The creature freed itself from the remaining shackles and unleashed a blast with both its hands. All that was left of the solders was a gruesome mess of blood where they stood. The air filled with a haunting scream that echoed throughout the halls. The creature released a menacing growl in the form of words that sent chills down my spine. Dennis McCarthy, my father's name. Right before the camera blacked out, I could have sworn he was in the brink of morphing into a human form, but the recording was cut short by the thunderous detonation of explosions that sent the building into destruction, burying the truth within its rubble. The scientists, including my dad, were taken by the ESA, Extraterrestrial Security Agency, and hidden in a heavily guarded underground haven. They were issued new identities and relocated, which isn't a new concept for the government. As far as the drone's visual feed could capture, the entire operation was terminated, leaving behind the collapsed and buried ruins of a facility that was once fully functional. It was under strict surveillance for any signs of life, but as the years rolled by, complacency set in, compromising their once strict security measures. My father, uncle, and the rest of the scientists assumed new lives and identities. As far as the rest of the world was concerned, they were dead. In 2010, an unexpected interruption occurred. Reports indicated that the drones simultaneously malfunctioned, and the video feed erupted into static. A team arrived at the site to find it disrupted. All the drones lay in scattered heaps across the landscape. Before anyone could investigate or react, all communication with the agents safeguarding the scientists was abruptly terminated. One by one, the connections were severed, leaving them permanently unreachable. When they reached my father's safe house, they were greeted with his spine-chilling absence. He had vanished without so much as a trace that he had ever been there to begin with. No signs of struggle, or any shred of evidence left behind. He was lost in an infinite void of mystery. The only indication that something was amiss was the eerie blue glow invading the monitors moments before blackout. The only accurate word for it would be suction, leading the team to believe that they had been absorbed. It remained a speculation, though plausible enough to send waves of panic up their spines. As we speak, governments around the world have been swept up into the desperate search to locate the alien, as well as training an elite group of drone pilots and soldiers in an attempt to confront and defeat the elusive entity. Furthermore, every effort at locating surviving relatives of the missing scientists, including my father, had fallen short. They too had vanished into an infinite cloud of mystery, not one left unscathed to provide answers. Considering the site's altered state, the complete destruction of the drones, and the fact that the creature they had held captive was constantly evolving, they were profoundly aware of the unraveling truth. I am the sole living descendant of the scientists that worked for ESA. The creature has made it his mission to eliminate any and all traces of their existence. This is the sole reason I was upended from my life and relocated to a heavily guarded facility, and this is the reason I feel compelled to share their stories. I couldn't comprehend why the creature would hunt me since I didn't share the sins of my father, but I felt paranoid and vigilant regardless. I couldn't help but feel compelled to look into the disappearances myself, perhaps due to some lingering hopes that the information was wrong. My pursuit for answers turned up nothing, not even social media accounts. It was as if any trace of their existence was utterly obliterated. There was no digital footprint left. The reason I am now convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that my life is in danger is because I have started catching glimpses of subtle movements in my peripheral, a shadowy figure lurking around the premises, disruptions in the signal of my appliances, even the phone I am using right now. Call me foolish for even relying on the very technology that might lead to my demise, but I felt compelled to warn anyone else who might be a descendant of the team that worked for ESA, Project Corrosion. If you're aware, then heed my words and flee. If you are unaware, observe the news for any sudden or unexplained disappearances. And I regret to inform you, but if you come across the creature, then it's too late. Stay safe, my friends.